This is eCoffee with Experts, where marketers and founders share what's actually working in SEO, AI, and digital growth. Grab your coffee and fuel your mind as we chat with top minds about their wins, struggles, and lessons you won't find in a blog post. Brought to you by Digital Web Solutions, we bring real talk to help you grow your business, one episode at a time. Let's get started.
Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to your show, eCoffee with Experts. This is your host, Ranmay here. And today we have Sam Page, who is the head of SEO at InMotion Hosting with us. Hey, Sam, how is it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. So, Sam, before we take this any forward, why don't you talk us through your journey a bit? 20 plus years of experience, SEO leadership across major tech and enterprise brands. So how it has all been so far, and how did you land up in the SEO space? Take us through your journey and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Yeah. So almost, 23 years of SEO experience. So it gives me some good perspective on things that are happening now, I think. I started in SEO in 2003. I bought an online casino. Back then there was not a lot of documentation on SEOs. Just jumped in and started testing things. Got some good rankings, international rankings too. So that was interesting. And yeah, that kind of excited me and got me kind of sort of validated this idea that I could make a career out of SEO.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I sold that company, I moved to an agency in Dallas and started working there for several years, trying to learn as much as I could. It was a very similar time to now where there was lots of changes and lots of things to adapt to, right? So very fun to learn and experiment and kind of come up with my own hypotheses and test them. So from there, I took a couple in-house jobs, including a role as the head of SEO at Bluehost, which is a pretty big hosting company. I worked there for a few years and was promoted to the head of hosting brands, which included a few other hosting companies, domain.com and hostgator.com. So I had some really good success, and going into the pandemic, it was a really good tailwind for the company. And also it was a good tailwind for me because I moved jobs to be the global head of SEO at Amazon Business. So Amazon Business hadn't had someone in that role, and I was happy to start up an SEO program for them. Really enjoyed my time there and learned a ton working at that kind of scale. Like they were doing, I think it was $30 billion in revenue without any SEO. So different challenges, right? Like most companies, I feel like they face the challenge of just they need the revenue and they maybe have to worry about authority or, link building and things like that. Whereas a bigger company, it's more about the fundamentals of are the pages being crawled? Is the site architecture correct? Are the meta tags properly implemented? Things like that. And from Amazon Business, I moved to director of SEO at Slack. While I was at Slack, I helped build the team there too. I've always had sort of this fondness for starting a team with a hybrid model of in-house support, but also agency support. I think that kind of covers a lot of the scaling up of a bigger company. And then, I was there for a little while, maybe 9 or 10 months, not a long time, because at this time, the AEO, GEO stuff was really coming in, and I was noticing that I was sort of falling behind, and I wanted to be more at the forefront, learn and test more. So I actually accepted this role at InMotion Hosting as head of SEO and content here, and it's been really fun back in the hosting space. And we can test and learn a lot more. And I think it's been a really interesting time to be in SEO. I think a lot of folks, are finding it frustrating, but I see that as an opportunity.
Lovely. Quite a journey, I must say. You have been through and through in the SEO space, right? And you have been on both sides of the table. You have worked with an agency, you have worked with enterprise brands, right? So wherein you would have had the experience of dealing with agencies as well. So how is it? I mean, different from one another? What are the challenges? And is life a bit comfortable on the brand side of things?
It is a bit comfortable, but it's just uncomfortable in different ways, I think, too. I found that agency work is great when you are learning and you're younger with lots of energy. And I think that you end up doing 3 or 4 jobs as an agent at an agency, right? You're really Yeah, you're really like in this agency role, but you have like 3 or 4 clients that you're really spending a almost full time working with. So, but I do think that you find ways to get a lot more done with an agency. It's more of like the fulfillment aspect, whereas in-house, you're more of the strategy, reporting, trying to sift through bureaucracy, trying to unlock things for your agency partners, right? I think that's a big thing for in-house roles. Agencies, agency partners, they struggle with bureaucracy of big companies too.
Mhm.
So it's incumbent on the in-house person to unblock those things and keep them busy with the work that they do well. So yeah, I think it's comfortable on the in-house. I like having a singular focus. I think that's for me at this stage in my life. I like that. At a younger age and when I was really starting my career, I think the agency side supported my journey better.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I can so relate to this when you said, yeah, you are quite literally doing 3 to 4 jobs in the sense that you're doing so much across multiple verticals. I mean, you're selling, you're delivering, you are doing project management, you're looking after SEO, so much of learning as well. And like you rightfully said at the beginning of your journey, getting an agency experience really, really helps you and, actually in a good stead moving forward. And then you have spoken so much about SEO being more than rankings. So how do you tie SEO initiatives directly to revenue forecasting in a way that leadership actually trusts?
Yeah, you have to use data, right, to support your revenue forecasts. So that just means creating good models, testable, verifiable models for forecasting. I can be more specific if you'd like. I think it probably would help the audience, but if
Yeah.
you know like your conversion rate on a certain page, you can model out, well, if we grow our traffic to this page, a similar amount of traffic from with the same intents, you can expect growth in traffic and conversion rates. And then that conversion rate, obviously, you have a conversion value, right? So what's the average order value? Generally, this is
Mhm.
for like you might break this out into like sections of a site. So if you have
Mhm.
like a product marketing site or a blog,
Mhm.
you would want you don't obviously they don't have like the same type of conversion rate and conversion value, so you would want to model that out per section of the site. But yeah, I think that it's and then also you want to like you don't want to just throw out random numbers for growth trajectories. You kind of want to look at historical like 2 or 3 year averages, like what have you grown in the
Yeah.
last couple of years. I think this is especially true now when people are seeing their traffic from Google decline. So many folks are not getting the same amount of visits from Google that they had in the past. So forecasting for 2026 is very much like, you want to probably like mostly break even or mitigate the traffic loss. And then also it's probably prudent to forecast growth in LLM traffic. And that's something I've done the last couple of years is, we're seeing this trend in LLM referral traffic, getting an idea of what our conversions are there and what our strategy and expected return on investment in those would be.
Absolutely. And, you have been vocal about SEO teams operating in silos, like you mentioned, building teams is one of your areas of expertise. So, what org level changes as per you, did you push to make SEO cross channel by default?
Yeah, I think it's more important now than ever to collaborate with your internal teams, especially, with the LLM growth hinging more on I find that content creation it's probably overrated at this point. I
Okay.
hate to say that, right? Because I know this is going to be a long answer. We're going to go off on a tangent, but I promise I'll bring it
Yeah,
back on.
go for it. Go for it.
But yeah, so if you're creating content, your site on your website, on your blog, on your support center, whatever, yeah, LLMs and Google know there's an inherent bias, right? You're not going to publish negative comments about your own brand. And also, so they'll discard that part to some degree. And then also, if you are writing for non-brand terms that are like easily solved or better solved by Reddit threads or YouTube videos, you're not going LLMs
Okay.
and Google are not going to want to surface your piece of content over that. So that leaves you with the content you create needs to probably be focused solely on like your products, like walkthroughs on your products, use case, uh, things to like that customers would search for. So it'll be like improving more of your branded search traffic. But I say that because that means you need to, as a SEO owner, as a director or someone who owns the channel, it makes it more important to lean on your product marketing team, your product managers, your affiliate team. So getting affiliates to recommend your site. So that's LLM citations mentions as well. And also like your social media team. So getting Reddit visibility, YouTube visibility, working with link building is also still very important. These types of activities, I think, off the site are underrated. So where content now is, I think, a little bit overrated, I think the offsite stuff is a bit underrated. And I think it's also harder for folks to conceptualize what an offsite strategy for LLM SEO looks like.
Yeah. And I mean, before we move into the AI and LLMs world, you have been in the space for more than 2 decades now. Barring, uh, AI, what has been one of the most significant Google updates that really shook the space as per you?
Yeah, I've seen the Panda updates, Penguin updates. Those were pretty big, but I think that helpful content update was probably the biggest one, and I think that ties in with the LLM AI content changes. So, like the helpful content was almost unrecoverable. I feel like Panda, Penguin, you could recover from, but the
Yeah.
helpful content update to me has been the one that if you were impacted, most sites were impacted, especially on like their brand or non-brand pages, like blog pages. So yeah, I think that one seems to be the most impactful, and maybe that's recency bias, but yeah, that's kind of the way I see
And
it.
in your view, with all of this AI storm and LLMs and, SEO performance, when impressions exist but clicks don't, what are the biggest misconceptions about optimizing for LLMs, versus traditional search that you have come across in your SEO discussions with your peers, clients? Yeah.
Yeah, so the differences between optimizing for LLMs versus Google, I don't actually see them as being much different at this point. I think Google, if you're an engineer at Google or you own search, you see the writing on the wall that LLMs are taking traffic from Google. So what do? You want to solve the same problems that the LLMs are solving, and you probably behave in a similar way. So yeah, no, I don't make any differentiation when I'm making an SEO decision. It's an SEO decision that impacts both Google and LLMs. There's never like, I'm only doing this for Google or I'm only doing this for LLMs.
And what about the technical SEO elements that still matter today? I understand, we are talking about linked mentions, about brand mentions, link building strategies, digital PR, but what are the tech SEO elements which still matters?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer here is schema implementation.
Yeah.
And I think that's more easy to do than ever. You can have LLMs write the schema, validate,
Oh, yeah.
implement, nearly implement, right? So I think that's one of the ones. I think also there's some interesting page speed optimizations and like content pipeline optimizations you can use. I think with tools like Lovable, there's some technical like crawling and visibility things you can solve for there that allows you to programmatically create a bunch of content. Again, I still think that's a little bit overrated. Yeah, no, I think that those are the sort of the fringe cases at this point, especially for enterprises. But I think, what's a fringe case now might be um,
Mhm.
the standard later.
And then what is your stance on programmatic SEO now that LLM visibility is part of the equation there?
I think it's still valuable for some businesses. I think it's easier to do now than ever, which when the bar is low, it makes you easier or more susceptible to being dinged by some algo update or if people are abusing it to rank, it's you're putting yourself out there as a potential target. But I do think it has a lot of value. I think you just have to make sure you're doing something, one, that's unique, and two, that's valuable. If you can solve that with programmatic, then that's great. I think, when I think of like the best programmatic pages, I think of pages on like realtor.com or zillow.com, right? Where it's just a house address. You type in your house address and it comes up and there's millions of houses on that. And that's all like programmatic, right? There's not a person going in there and creating each home listing. So that's a really valuable instance. But then there's also, it doesn't have to be millions of pages to be programmatic. You can have it as just a couple dozen, right? And still have good programmatic SEO. And it doesn't have to be long, right? There's that long form content that used to be the way it was done. And now you can have it just as an FAQ, as a programmatic page.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And still, how do you think even today, internal linking and information architecture, but the importance of it in a world where I literally summarizes across pages?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tricky. It's something I think you have to look into before you start implementing. I think that there's a lot of mixed messages on right now on like, do you chunk out content versus do you continue to write for the user? And I think if you tend to write your content for the user, excuse me, and solve the problem, right? Like all of this is like content solving a problem, right? So if you solve the problem concisely and accurately and the user is happy with it, then I think that's a great start. That's the best way to do that. But yeah, your content architecture or your site hierarchy and content architecture is super crucial for getting this content found, right? So you can have the best content, but if it's buried on like a 10th paginated page that Google's probably not crawling, you're going to be in trouble anyway, right? It's not going to be found by anybody. So internal linking, content architecture, checking your crawl budget, like looking at your log files, seeing if these pages are getting crawled. Those are really valuable checks and balances to make sure you're getting what you want.
Absolutely. And finally, as you plan for 2026, Sam, which SEO activities holds the most importance in your strategy for increasing investment at InMotion Hosting?
There's a lot of that's a really hard question to answer because there's a lot of dependencies to things.
Yeah.
Right. Like we plan to create a good amount of content, but the technical SEO aspect has to be addressed and managed well. And also we also plan to create a lot of content, but the hygiene of that content and accuracy and freshness of the content needs to be addressed. So without one, you can't really have the other. So I would say among those three things, it's almost equal weight. And then I would also add the offsite stuff is almost maybe more heavy in my mind. So what in my mind and what in executives' minds are kind of different. So it's like try to do both and find the middle ground. But I think off page is super valuable if you can get links, citations, mentions of this content that you're creating and have it take off naturally. That's the ideal scenario.
Lovely. And for audiences, Sam, for a young audience in particular, 20 plus years of CEO, have worked in Amazon, Salesforce across multiple industries and enterprise level companies. What would be that piece of advice you'd want to give to our young listeners who are trying to make a career in the SEO space?
Yeah, I think I'll give two pieces of advice. I think the one is create your own website, create your own strategies at home, tinker with your own things and learn on your own. I spent a lot of time in my earlier years doing my own stuff and I made some money on some projects on the side that was very fulfilling, like very rewarding.
Yeah.
And so it's not like something you have to do for free. Like you can make some money on your side projects too. And I always loved hiring folks. I mean, I made it like a staple. Like, what do you do on the side, right? Do you have any website you built? No. And so if they had something like that, they automatically got a notch ahead in the hiring process. And then I also really, once someone's hired on and they're maybe a more junior role, I loved when they were ambitious and took on they were more open to taking on new tasks and new, they'd put their hand up for new requests and they were more if they were more engaged, it was always very helpful. So I think just be open to taking on a lot of different tasks and learning on the fly. Don't be afraid to mess up. I think I notice a lot of junior folks get very scared to screw something up. And
Yeah.
at Amazon, they had this concept of a one-way door and a two-way door. And I still think it's really a very valuable concept. Like if it's a one-way door, like if the door you go through, but you can't go back, you don't rush through that, right? But if it's a two-way door, you can come back through, you can just go do it, right? Even if you screw it up, you can reverse back. So look at a lot of those two-way doors and take your chances and see what happens. And don't be afraid. I've never worked with someone who messed something up so badly that they got fired. This is at big companies, right? So the only folks who get laid off or get fired, it's in my opinion, again, the folks who get fired are not providing value or not active, like engaged with the company. So yeah, those are a few. I guess it's probably more than two pieces of advice, but yeah.
Lovely, lovely. Perfect, Sam. This has been a great conversation, but before we let you go, I would like to play a quick rapid fire with you. I hope you're game for it.
Okay, I'll try. I'm not the fastest.
Right, don't worry. All right. Since we have been speaking about SEO, Google was our thing back in the day. Your last Google search.
I think it was, I know what it was. I Googled what tennis racket someone used. So a big tennis player, I was curious what racket they actually were using. You see what they endorse, but what they play with is different.
Oh, yes. Valid point there. All right. Moving on. What did you do with your first paycheck, Sam? First paycheck of your life?
I mean, I worked some crappy jobs, so I'm pretty sure I just spent them. But like in my first like real job, I definitely went out to Chipotle with my wife and my girlfriend at the time.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely. Your next vacation?
I don't have one planned exactly. I would say it's probably taking my kids to Disney World or some beach vacation. Yeah, probably something, either one of those two.
Lovely. Okay, one last question. Will not drill you any further.
Yeah.
If you can go back in time and change one thing from your professional career, if at all, what would that be?
Yeah, I think about this often, actually. I love the counterfactual thoughts. I don't think I would change anything in my professional career. I'm really happy. There's maybe times when I could have maybe stuck out. I could have stuck out a more like stressful situation at a job longer, but it would have been at the cost of mental health and not, and my, I mean, it's great to see my bank accounts go up, but my mental health would also suffer. So I just don't think there's anything I could do differently and be more happy.
Lovely. Lovely. Great, yeah, Sam. This has been a fantastic episode. I'm sure our audience would love this. Thank you so much for taking out time to do this with us. Really appreciate it, man.
No problem.
Cheers.
Thanks for inviting.